If you sit down across from somebody else and say, hey, I'm going to share with you what I do, and all I want you to do is repeat it back to me in your own words, you're going to learn so much about how well you're communicating and how accessible your ideas really are. And you're also going to learn if your language and the way that you're presenting something is driving people in the wrong direction, right? Because if you're describing it and then they come back to you and they're like, oh yeah, you do this, and it's not what you do at all, then you know, like, okay, that's something I need to focus on and think about from an accessibility standpoint.
I'm Junaid Ahmed, host of Hacks and Hobbies podcast and a digital presence advisor at HumbleZone. This episode is brought to you by Home Studio Mastery. I launched a consultation and course program to help podcasters and course creators to create a space in their homes that will reduce the friction of creating content and appearing their best when showing up on camera. The pandemic gave us a lot of issues, but this one is here to stay. We're now so much closer to our audience thanks to video becoming more popular and affordable. I help guide folks who want to create Hollywood-worthy studios to not only capture great content, but also build more confidence, more authority, and be more comfortable in front of the camera. If I can do it, you can too. And with my help, you can do it faster. So if you'd like to learn more, visit homestudiomastery.com and how you too can create a home studio that brings out your personality, professionalism, and possibilities. Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life. We want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around.
In this episode of the Hacks and Hobbies, our guest, Michael, shares his journey from a high school English teacher to a Broadway producer and eventually an expert in networking and referability. We explore the importance of making brands referable and how to craft memorable messages that leave a lasting impact. Discover the triple threat of thought leadership and learn how to leverage the celebrity, scientist, and magician within yourself to create an aura of curiosity and influence. Tune in to gain insights on how to become a thought leader and make your brand truly referable with Michael Roderick. Michael, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, what's cool is that we've been connected for the past few months, and what you've shared has been really monumental. And the way you work with people and make brands referable and their messages memorable, like that's something that I'm still struggling on, where my messaging is memorable. I know there's a few stories that I always go back to, but getting the messaging right is super, super important. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started, and what's going on.
Sure. So I started out as a high school English teacher, and I went from being a high school English teacher to becoming a Broadway producer in under 2 years. So a lot of people are very curious as to how I had done that. And I started to study networking. So I actually started hosting workshops where I would simulate one-on-one meetings, job interviews, and cocktail parties. And I became really well known in that whole sort of connecting space, relationship building space. And probably about 5 or 6 years back, I asked myself the question, if I took networking out of the equation entirely, what was it that still got me into all the rooms I get into? And I had this realization that it was because people would talk about me when I wasn't in the room in a good way. So I started to study referability in the same way that I had studied networking. I started to look at, why is it that people talk about us? Why is it that they remember us? Why is it that they decide to share our ideas? And now the work I do is mostly focused on thought leadership, helping thoughtful givers become thought leaders through this creation of referable brands.
Man, that is really powerful. And being referable is a really good quality, not being talked about in a third person or behind your back kind of thing, but more in a positive mindset, just like we talk about Kobe Bryant and Michael Jackson and all the amazing producers and creators came before us. So how do brands become referable, and what's something that
has kept you coming back? What kept you motivated to really dig into this aspect of helping brands?
Yeah, so a lot of this, I'll go with what motivated me. The thing that I just see is that there are people who they have so much expertise. They're really brilliant. Like they do just amazing work for the clients that they have.
Mm-hmm.
But as a result of putting all of that focus into that client work, they don't take the time to ever look at what they want, right? Like they never sit down and basically say, okay, what do I want the world to know about me? What do I
Mm,
want people to share about me? What do I want people to see? So when I started working with folks on that side of things, it was really about, okay, you have all of this expertise, but has it been packaged yet? And I think that going back to my Broadway background, the question that I would ask is, if your business was a Broadway show, would anybody buy a ticket? Do
mm,
people get it? And are they able to say, oh yes, I believe in what you're doing. I believe in your expertise. I want to learn more from you. And what I just found was that some of the most extraordinary people end up with the most subpar marketing, and some of the most subpar experts end up with the most extraordinary marketing. So you get these people who they're
mm,
not actually that skilled, but they've figured out a way to package themselves,
mhm.
and they completely eclipse these people who are doing really important work. So my mission, the way that I like to look at these things, is saying, okay, find these people who are doing such great work and help them figure out how they're going to share this with others, how they're going to get
Yeah.
others to follow them and think about their ideas and want to promote and talk about what they do.
Michael, give me some of the examples of somebody who's really good but didn't really market themselves, and somebody who isn't as good but they market themselves really well.
Yeah. On the really good side, so I'll actually frame this up.
Okay.
So basically, thought leadership has what I like to refer to as a triple threat. So in the
Hmm.
acting world, there's the idea of the triple threat of the singer, dancer, actor, right?
Yeah.
And in thought leadership, there's the triple threat of the celebrity, the scientist, and the magician. And the celebrity is very good at self promotion. They're
Mm.
very good at talking about themselves. They're very good at just like getting their stuff out there.
Yeah.
And the scientist is very good at the nuts and bolts of the work. Like they understand things in a very succinct way. Like
Mm.
they've got the studies to back up everything that they have. And then the magician is the wordplay guy or girl, right? Like they're very good at coming up with these like catchy phrases and all these different types of things.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you get people who they're the scientists. They're really brilliant at what they do.
Hmm.
And you won't hear, so you're not going to hear of, let's just use an example of a doctor. You're not going to hear about the doctors who are doing the most like groundbreaking research, because
Right.
they're really digging into that aspect of being the scientist, and they're
Yeah.
probably not doing any of the celebrity side of things. But
Hmm.
you know who Dr. Phil is, and how much expertise, how much science is really behind who Dr. Phil is?
Hmm.
Not a lot, right? It's
Yeah.
mostly celebrity, it's mostly promotion, it's mostly coming up with pseudoscience and things that you
Mm.
could share that everybody else is like buying into, right? So the doctors who are doing the real research, they haven't done any of that packaging because they're the
Right.
scientists. They're not tying in that celebrity and magician kind of component.
You're so right, because when they are putting the time and energy into the work that they are really good at, they don't have time to promote. And and I'm guessing that's where you come in. Okay, we know that you're doing really amazing work. Let's make you also referable so people know the good that you're doing.
Exactly, exactly. And the thing is, a lot of people struggle with this idea of talking about themselves.
Mm.
Like it's a hard thing for a lot of people. And the way that I like to look at it is that you don't actually have to talk about yourself. You can speak softly and carry a big idea.
Mm.
So you can be that person who just shares interesting concepts and interesting ideas, and people will gravitate towards you. They will want to hear more about what you say, and you actually won't have to be self-promotional, right? Like
Yeah.
you won't actually have to be like, hey, everybody look at me, because they're so interested in your ideas. And I think that the thing that we forget about is that when we get somebody to think differently,
Mm-hmm.
that creates an indelible impression. And most
Ah.
experts, they try to teach you how to do something, right? And if you teach me how to do something, great, but there's 100 other people who can teach me how to do something. I can buy a course to do something, right? But the true thought leaders, they teach you how to think about something.
Mm.
Because then you go out into the world and you start thinking differently about your world, about the things that you're doing, about the things that you're making happen. And what do? You refer back to that person. And I'm sure you probably have instances where you're just like quoting these people,
Yeah.
right? You've read their book, not because they told you what to do,
Mm-hmm.
but they gave you a way of thinking differently.
I love that a lot. I love that a lot. And yes, I've been teaching a lot and I've been creating these episodes in how to be a referable brand, could be this episode's name. Or
Mhm.
and so I've been teaching the how, and then I try to throw in the thought provoking ideas. So even though
Mhm.
so it's been it's been a journey for sure to come to that
Sure.
realization. People pay attention to stories, people pay attention to how you set it up, and your background in Broadway is like such a perfect place to be, because you're so exactly who the audience is, and your podcast access to anyone, showing people how to get in business with anybody in life.
Mhm. Yeah. And the thing is, like, the fascinating thing about it is that most of the time we're focused on access and we think about this aspect of, can I get in front of this person?
Mhm.
How do I get these opportunities? And really, the best way to get access is to create interest. So if you're
Create
able to
interest.
get people to be like, oh, I'm curious about you,
Mhm.
they'll come to you. They'll
Yeah.
answer your cold email. They'll come to you if you can create something that's interesting enough. If you
Mhm.
make people curious to learn more about you, then you win, because you
Yeah.
don't have to pitch. You never have to think about, oh, I want to communicate my value. No, you don't, because you literally share this idea and they're like, wow, I'm thinking so much differently about this
Mhm.
person. So can you be on my podcast? Can you come and help me with this thing? Can I work with you? Can I be part of your group? Like, all those things come up
Yeah.
as a result of you being like, I love how that person thinks and I just want to be in their orbit more.
Oh my God. Yeah. And the more you listen and create that aura, the more people are attracted to you and want to hang out with you even more.
Yep.
You'll start showing up in the same circles and the same places. I'm like, are you stalking me? No, I just
Yeah.
love being in your circle.
Yeah. I want to hear your stuff, right?
Mhm.
Like, they want to keep showing up and hearing those hits that you're putting out there, right?
Yeah.
Those things that they're like, oh yeah, I love that quote. I love that way of saying something. I love that
Mm.
way of thinking. Like, they're going to show up again and again for your ideas more so than anything else.
Just last month, I went to this internet marketing party, and apparently they've been doing these parties for a decade. And so
Yes,
this
indeed.
gentleman came up, and I don't know if they've done them over where you're at,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, I don't know if there's been a New York one. I don't know if there's been a New York one. I know that there have been a bunch, like during some of the conferences and things like
yeah,
that. But yeah.
yeah, at this event, Eben Pagan came and spoke.
Mhm.
Now, I had
Yep.
not heard of him before, and when I went up to talk to him, I was like, "Dude, I've never heard of you before, but I loved what you taught." And I grabbed his book that he was giving away. I'm like, "I'm gonna read your book, and I'm gonna come back and follow." Now, I kept thinking to myself, that was a stupid first thing to say to anybody. I've never heard of you before. Like, you've never heard of me before either. But he spoke about some really good things, and he talks about feelings and creating these emotions in people. And when you create these conversations or have the conversation, I think it just really opens up the people listening to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and ultimately that's at the heart of the work that you do. If you can create enough curiosity, people will come to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? People will come to you, they'll want to learn more, they'll want to do more. If you can create enough curiosity,
Yeah.
if you get them thinking and being like, oh man, I need to know more, I need to be around that person
Mm-hmm.
more, then you don't really need to spend a lot of time trying to get them to listen because they're already listening. And I think like in
Yeah.
the marketing world, especially, there's so many people who are out there shouting that you're in this place of you would need to shout really loud or get
Mm-hmm.
yourself a microphone to be heard. And you want to be the person who people listen when you whisper.
Yes.
That's the person you want to be.
Yes. And I love that. And I think what you mentioned about being curious about people and then coming and answering, I've been doing some experiments on my Facebook, and I said, I saw somebody posting this and they said, hey, just curious, I want to be nosy. What's the last photo you took on your phone?
Mm,
And there's 50 comments where people are posting their photos from their phone because it's an easy
yep.
activity.
Yeah.
You're inviting them to be curious, and now you can ask and have a conversation about the photo that they shared.
Yeah. And what you're bringing up actually is when I talk about referability, I talk about the
Hmm.
idea of accessibility, influence, and memory. And what you're talking about is probably one of the most perfect examples of influence, because
Mm,
influence, a lot of us think about influence in the context of persuasion. We think about how am I going to get somebody to do something?
yeah.
But true influence is if you do something without me asking you to do it.
Hmm.
And what's the only reason I'm going to do something without you asking me is if it gives me something to do it, right? If it
Yeah.
gives me something as a result of it. So when you ask people to share a
Hmm.
photo from their phone, you're giving them an opportunity to basically showcase something about themselves.
Yeah.
So they're going to do it. That's why you're going to get a lot of
Hmm.
comments, because you're basically saying, "Hey, here's my platform. Share with me who you are."
Yeah.
And people love that. People love
Hmm.
it when you hand them the microphone.
Yeah. That's so powerful. And I've been seeing a lot of good results from that. I just haven't figured out the second part. Okay, what do I
Mhm.
do with all these contacts? How do I engage
Mhm.
with them and keep them coming back for more education?
Yeah.
An episode in one of the past episodes, I had spoken with my good friend Fanny Dunnigan, and she was talking about there's four types of content that you should be creating, and based on the day of the week. So, the beginning of the week, have some educational content and informational content, and then towards the end
Mhm.
of it, have entertainment and engagement content. So then they're just winding down. They're like, oh, this is pretty fun thing to do.
Yeah. And the thing is, those types of like entertainment types of things where people are commenting or talking about it, it just opens up the opportunity to have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like it opens people up to the idea like, oh, okay, maybe it would be interesting to have a conversation. And a lot of the time it's just reaching out
Hmm.
and seeing like who is open to having a conversation. And the
Yeah.
thing is, most of us are getting these just ridiculous pitches where somebody's trying to sell us something right off the bat,
Hmm.
or they're doing this sort of like back and forth script that they learned from somebody's like lead gen
Yeah.
process. And
Yeah.
most people are like, I don't like, I already know what I'm getting into, right? But if you're the person who's literally, I just looked up who you are, I'm reading your stuff,
Hmm.
and here's this question that I have about this thing that you're doing,
Yeah.
you're going to get into a conversation because
Hmm.
most people don't do any research, right?
No.
Like it's
No.
so rare that if you're the person who takes 5 minutes to do a little bit of research when reaching out to somebody, let's say you had 50 people comment and you basically
Hmm.
were like, okay, I'm going to take one of those people and I'm just going to look on their page and see what they're up to. And
Yeah.
then you like message them and you're like, hey, I was just checking out your page. I saw that you were doing this. I saw that you're doing this lead gen workshop. How did it go? What's
Hmm.
going on? And you never know where that
Yeah.
conversation's going to lead, because now there's curiosity, right? They're, oh, that's interesting. Who are you? And let's talk
Yeah.
more and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's almost like you're interested enough to spend some time watching what I'm doing. And we love that when people ask us about, oh, that project that you were working on, that's so cool. And you're like, yeah, I put time in it, check it out, and you want to talk more about it.
Yeah. And you can't underestimate the significance of making other people feel significant, right?
Mm, yeah.
So the more that you're looking at, how do I have this person feel seen, heard, feel like they matter,
Yeah.
the deeper the relationships are, because most of the conversations that we have are usually pretty cursory, and a lot of people don't do any research on us and don't
Mm,
look at who we are. So the second I took the time to look at what you're doing, and I want to genuinely share the things that I enjoy or the things that I like about it, it just hits in a completely different way, right? There's so many people out there who they'll read a book and they'll be like, I want to reach out to that author or whatnot, but they won't actually take the time to get hyper specific and
mm,
be like, in chapter 13, you talk about this concept, and I'm really curious about this one element of chapter 13. And then it's, oh, well, what is that element? What is
mm.
that? What are you asking me about? You never know. Second, you get enough curiosity, people will respond. That's really what makes things work.
Yeah. No, man, that's really powerful. So as you've started this company helping business leaders, thought leaders, making their brands referable and their messaging memorable and making their ideas unforgettable,
Mhm.
what is some of the things that someone can do to make their messaging more memorable?
Sure. So the way that I like to think about memory is that if you want people to remember you more, you focus on less. And that's language, emotion, simplicity, and structure. So I'll start with language.
Mm-hmm.
If you come up with your own language for things, either your own way of saying something or your own actual words, you basically carve a piece of mental real estate in somebody's head. And if
Ooh.
I said to you, what brand comes to mind when I say venti coffee? Instantly, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not even, it's like right there,
Yeah.
right? If I say what brand comes to mind when I say just do it,
Mhm.
there's no, or
There's
if
no
I
question.
draw a swoosh, there's nothing, right? Like it's instant, right?
Mhm.
So the thing is, if you have your own language, your own thing, right? Then you are carving a piece of mental real estate. People will start quoting you, people will start using that language. So you're going to be in their memory. So if you are able to do that, you can layer on emotion, right? And our emotions help to solidify our memories.
Mm.
Because if I ask somebody, what did they do 3 days ago? They may not be able to tell me. But if I say, could you tell me in detail what the worst day of your life looked like? You are very likely to be able to give me all of those
Yeah.
details because you were in a heightened emotional state. And when we're in a heightened emotional state, I believe in psychology, there was a study done about it called, they call it like the flashbulb moment or
Mm.
something, where the idea was when you are in a very heightened emotional state, you're actually able to retain more information about the details, about the
Yeah.
surroundings,
It's like a black
right?
box.
Exactly, exactly. And it's just
Mm.
like boom, it's all sucked together. And the example that I often use from pop culture is you can ask anybody who's seen the movie Titanic, what are the opening scenes of Titanic? And most people can't tell you,
Mm-mm.
right? But if you say, what image comes into your head when I say I'll never let go?
Mm.
All of a sudden, a bunch of people have the image of Jack and Rose floating in the ocean, right?
Mhm.
Why? Because that was a heightened emotional moment
Yeah.
in that movie that sort of gets you to that place. So if you've got your own language for things and you're layering on this aspect of emotion, you're really bringing this memory triggers like to a much higher level. But you can
Yeah,
go
yeah.
even further
Mm.
by focusing on simplicity, because our brains always reward simplicity. Our memory rewards simplicity. So if I say to you, can you get milk, bread, and eggs from the grocery store? You don't need a list. But if I rattle off 32 different things, you
Mhm.
need a list. And if you try to remember it, I'm not getting my groceries,
Yeah.
right? So when you make your concept or your idea simple, right? Like in my case, accessibility, influence, and memory spells the word aim, right? If I make it really simple, for you to remember and carry that information, you're
Yeah.
gonna remember it. You're gonna carry that information. You're gonna do more. You're gonna do more with it. And that ties to the last piece, which is structure. And our brains always need order in order to process information. We read a book from beginning to end, right? Unless we're doing one of those choose your own adventures,
Sure.
right? And the thing is, if we have a structure, we're going to be able to retain that information and carry that information with us. So the more that you think about how does somebody carry this information, and a lot of time we talk about the idea of storytelling, right? And we're like, it's so important to have a good story. But while it's very important to have a good story and to do a really great job storytelling, it's even more important to make sure that people are able to retell the story that you're telling.
Yeah.
That's how that story gets shared. So if you don't make it really easy to retell, you don't make it really easy for somebody to carry in their memory, chances are you're going to end up having that issue of people not sharing it, of not talking about it. And that's what a lot of subject matter experts go through. They don't have something succinct. So as a result, people try to go and explain what this person's about or what they do, and they don't have that easy way to do it. So they just decide, I'm not going to make that referral because I don't want to look stupid trying to explain to somebody what this person does.
Man, that is really powerful. And that's why you got to have proper messaging in place. So even if they can't remember what you do, maybe they can go to your website and grab a little piece of text so they can refer you the right way. Man, I love that.
Exactly.
Dude, you've shared so much. And when you mentioned the emotional part and even positioning that question, what was the worst day of your life? And I'm sure listeners can already flash back in their heads, oh my God,
Right.
that was the worst day of my life. And I'm thinking of a few memories in my head as well. I'm like, wow, that's really powerful. Like, you remember every single thing that happened.
Yeah.
And then it's gone. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, Michael, we're going to take a quick break. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom, and these really memorable concepts that we can take with us. We're going to take a quick break, and after the break, Michael's going to share 3 hacks to take away that you can apply into your life and be more memorable and unforgettable.
I'm Junaid Ahmed, host of Hacks and Hobbies podcast and a digital presence advisor at HumbleZone. This episode is brought to you by Home Studio Mastery. I launched a consultation and course program to help podcasters and course creators to create a space in their homes that will reduce the friction of creating content and appearing their best when showing up on camera. The pandemic gave us a lot of issues, but this one is here to stay. We're now so much closer to our audience thanks to video becoming more popular and affordable. I help guide folks who want to create Hollywood-worthy studios to not only capture great content, but also build more confidence, more authority, and be more comfortable in front of the camera. If I can do it, you can too. And with my help, you can do it faster. So if you'd like to learn more, visit homestudiomastery.com and how you too can create a home studio that brings out your personality, professionalism, and possibilities.
Welcome back, guys. We've been talking with Michael Roderick. He's an amazing human being, CEO of Small Pond Enterprises, and he's been helping thought leaders make their brands referable. He's got an amazing system, and the way that he helps us, it's been pretty amazing. All right, Michael, you've got 3 hacks to share with the audience. Let's go right to it.
Yeah. So the first is tied to this idea of accessibility, right? So a lot of the time people struggle with how do I make my concept or my idea accessible to others, right? So whether it be whatever your offer is or whatever it is that you're putting out there. So the thing that will help you with accessibility is what I like to refer to as the check for understanding. And when I used to teach, this is something that we did as teachers. What we would do is we would teach something, and then we would ask one of the kids in the classroom, we'd say, can you say back to me in your own words what I just said. And if you're a subject matter expert, if you're somebody who teaches or runs something, if you sit down across from somebody else and say, hey, I'm going to share with you what I do, and all I want you to do is repeat it back to me in your own words, you're going to learn so much about how well you're communicating and how accessible your ideas really are. And you're also going to learn if your language and the way that you're presenting something is driving people in the wrong direction, right? Because if you're describing it and then they come back to you and they're like, oh yeah, you do this, and it's not what you do at all, then okay, that's something I need to focus on and think about from an accessibility standpoint. Oops. Looks like you're on mute.
All right, so that's number one hack. What's number two?
Okay, so number two is tied to this idea of influence. And I had talked about the concept of you want to create something so that other people are sharing it and talking about it without you asking them to do it. The way that you do that is you create what I call a magic trick. So if you've ever been to a party and you've seen a magician, every magician has at least one trick that they can basically take you behind the scenes and show you exactly how they do the trick. And what's the next thing that you do? You go and you try to do that trick at a party. Your thought leadership, your ideas, your concepts, you want to think about, is there something that I can share with others that they are going to want to share with everybody else? So if, let's say you have a framework that you've developed where you're talking about 3 different types of clients and there's some kind of test or quiz that they take, right? Others are going to go and take that same test or quiz. And we've seen this with all of the personality tests and all the different things out there.
Yeah.
So you want to look at your stuff and ask, is there anything that would fall in that magic trick category? That magic trick category, what is something that I could craft or put together that other people would want to share because it makes them look cool?
Yeah. No, that's really powerful. So that's number 2, right?
Yep.
Awesome. So the first one, just to recap, so now I got to try to repeat what you just said. So first one is try to get the other people to check for understanding what you've told them. They've got to come back and tell you. Number 2, how well can they do a magic trick that you've taught them? Right?
Exactly.
All right. So number 3.
Yeah. So number 3, going back to that sort of memory component, so this is probably, I would say, the best thing. Let's say you're having one-on-one meetings or you're having networking meetings and you want to get people to basically buy. Like you want them to either say, I want to buy from you, or I want to refer you business. Most people in those meetings, they focus on talking about their solution. So they talk about, this is my process, this is my mastermind, this is my thing that I have, or they do they do the 60-second commercial of I help X entrepreneurs do whatever.
Yeah.
But that doesn't tap into emotion. What does tap into emotion is problems. And the thing that you can do is come up with, a lot of people think about the idea of a target market, right? Like I work with podcasters, I work with coaches, I work with mothers, right? But we don't think enough about a target problem. So if you actually go back to and look at the conversations that you've had with clients before they started working with you and all the pain points that they talked about, and you share that, you share the target problem. So in my case, I'd say something along the lines of, have you ever noticed how so many subject matter experts are so brilliant at what they do, and yet these people who are not very good end up just like completely eclipsing them? And they're so frustrated about the fact that they're not being seen for their expertise. They're not being recognized for their expertise, even though they're doing this amazing work for their clients.
Yeah.
What happens? You're feeling that emotion, right? And if it's you and you're like, oh my God, I put off packaging my intellectual property. I don't do that for myself. I'm being eclipsed by this person or that person. Then you're like, how do I work with you? And if you're not that person, you're like, oh my God, that sounds like my friend so and so who just complained to me about this the other day.
Yeah.
I'm going to refer you. I'm going to send it. And that's the thing. Most people never focus on really articulating and clarifying and diagnosing that problem, giving people language for the problem and the issue that they have. But when you do that, it doesn't matter if you're having a networking meeting, it doesn't matter if you're having a prospect meeting, you basically make it so that people are curious about working with you.
Wow. I love that. Sharing the target problems. Hey, these are problems that I've seen that people are facing, and I was able to help them.
Yep.
Wow. Like, whoa, really? Let me tell you another problem. Another problem that I solved for myself, right? The studio, building the studio out, because I didn't like the video that I saw in myself, and I couldn't focus on creating any content because I didn't look good. So I created the solution. Wow.
Yep. And the thing is, most people are not going to buy the solution, right?
They don't, yeah.
They're gonna buy the fact that you understand their problem. Then they're going to be willing to hear about the solution. So if you're very clear on this was the problem that you had, and you're validating, going back to the check for understanding, you're validating with them that's the problem, right? So is the problem, is the issue that they're having is that they feel embarrassed by what their background looks like, so they're not doing the things that they want to do. And if you're telling a story of your own embarrassment and your own problems, and if you're telling the story about, let's say, just for example, you decided because your background didn't look as good as you wanted it to, you decided to cancel an interview with one of the top podcasters, something that could literally change your life, and you decided to cancel it because of your background, and you tell us that story, what happens? Everybody else starts thinking about their background, starts thinking about what, I wonder if that would happen to me. I wonder how I'd feel if I didn't show up in that professional way. So what is the natural next thing? Now they're curious, is it hard to build a studio? Like, how would I do? Is it expensive? They're going to ask all of those questions. And that's when your target solution really gets it to work, because your target problem gets your client to raise their hand, and your target solution gets them to open their wallets.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And another problem that I faced that is emotional was I was editing my own podcasts. I was recording them. I was editing them myself because I was like, I don't need to hire somebody. I could do it myself. And guess what happened? I got myself fired. I was unemployed for 9 months, and I'm pulling my teeth. And then finally, when I did get hired, I hired somebody to edit my podcast because I didn't want to face that problem ever again.
Yep. And there you go. And there were people, like, there are literally people out there right now who are listening to this interview, right? And they're hearing that story and they're thinking, oh my God, that's what I did. And it may not be as extreme, right? It may not be that they lost their job as a result of it, but maybe they're feeling like, oh my God, I'm not spending enough time with my family because I'm spending all these hours doing this editing that I really shouldn't be doing. And I don't know how to pay for that editing. I'm not sure. And now it's okay. I have this solution. I have this way to solve this problem, to help you with this. But it's that aspect of helping people to understand that you understand their problem that causes them to believe in the solution. They will not believe in your solution unless they really believe that you understand their problem.
That is so powerful. Man, this has been very inspiring and very intriguing episode. Thank you so much for opening my mind in so many ways. And there's a phrase that says, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And
And what's beautiful is that has happened a lot for me this entire year of 2022
Yeah.
because I've gone through so much growth. It's incredible. It's incredible. All right, Michael. Now we got our flashcard questions. I'm
All
still trying
right.
to come up with a name for it, man. I'm calling them rapid fire flashcards.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Number one, what is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
For a very brief time, I tried to play harmonica because I had seen John Popper in Blues Traveler and wanted to be John Popper. And I never stuck with it long enough to really be able to play harmonica. So if I were to go back,
Mhm.
yeah, that would be the one.
Harmonica is there's a eclectic instrument. I love the sound of it. And we've had a few here and there where the kids would play with it. And I was like, okay, let me see if I can make a sound with it. No, it's
Yeah, it
not that
is
easy.
God bless the people who figured it out, because it is a very complicated thing
Yeah,
to figure out for sure.
absolutely. All right, next up. What did you want to be when you were a child?
So I had a lot of different things that I was very interested in when I was a child, but I would say probably the biggest one and the one that came up over and over again was a famous actor.
So you wanted to become a famous actor.
Yep. Yep.
Nice. You're in New York, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I would like you to check out backstage.com. Have you heard of it before?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes. Okay.
from my producing days and
Okay,
my
okay.
directing days.
All right, there you go. So you've already been on on that app. I was told about it in 2017 about by my friend, and he was like, dude, check out Backstage. I've got some acting gigs. So I'm like, all right, let me check it out. And within the first month of me being on the app, I got called in to be an actor for this ad Kaiser Permanente was putting together for like old people.
Oh my
And they're
god.
like, you got to pretend that you have knee pain. I was like, dude, I don't need to pretend. I'm a cyclist. I have knee pain.
I love that. I
So that
love
was
that.
fun. That was fun. And then I got another gig where I drove down to Virginia Beach and did a whole photo shoot where they're talking about retirement annuities. And I was the old man, and then I had
Oh
a
my god.
fake old wife, and we're like walking down the beach, and we have like a kid, and it was hilarious, man.
Oh man, I
Hilarious.
love it.
So I got a little bit of screen time, 5 seconds or so.
Yeah, there you go.
It's fun. All right, next up. Since we are talking about screen time, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Mm. So I'm gonna go with Breaking Bad. I think that's probably just like the pinnacle of good writing.
It's
It's
really
just a
good.
phenomenal show.
Yeah. No, I love that show. And I need to go back and catch up on Better Call Saul. I think I've watched 3 seasons of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's
They
really
did a
well
good job
done
with
too.
that one too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they have. All right, next up. What movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Ooh, that's interesting. I would want to be in one of the Marvel movies. I'm a huge
Mm,
comic book nerd.
yeah.
So yeah, I'd want to be one of those. I'd want to be one of the characters in a Marvel movie,
Yeah.
Avengers or something.
Pick a character, man. Pick a character.
Pick a character. Okay, who would I want to play in the Avengers? Let's say I'd want to play Iron Man. That'd be awesome.
Yes. That would
Yeah.
be awesome. Iron Man is pretty awesome. I actually went back and rewatched 1, 2, and 3 Iron Mans, and then like,
Nice.
yes, it's the best.
Yeah.
All right, so next question up is, who is your favorite superhero?
Spider-Man.
Okay,
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Always
Yeah,
been a huge fan of
nice.
Spider-Man.
Okay, you're a huge fan of Spider-Man. Which of the Spider-Mans? Because I know we've had 3 different Spider-Man on the cinematic
That's
universe.
true.
We've had the animated universe. We have some other Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
I it's a growing up that I watched the Tobey Maguire ones, and I
yeah,
was real Toby is definitely one of my favorites. I thought Andrew did a great job, and I think Tom's a great character, and I loved No Way Home because you got to see all of them. But Toby is definitely, for me, just going back to that idea of memory, like that's what I think of as Spider-Man, right? Like I'm always thinking back to those movies more so than any of the others.
I love it. Yeah, same for me. I like the Tobey Maguire because that's what I grew up in. Those are the ones that we saw when we were growing up. All right, last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
Oh, man, that's wild. I was a board game. What board game would I be? I'm gonna say Scrabble.
Oh yeah,
I'm a word guy, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
I'm like, and that's where you just come up with words is what Scrabble is all about. So I would be Scrabble.
Love it. Michael, thank you so much for your time. Where can my superpreneurs find you?
Yeah, so if they go to myreferabilityrater.com, they can literally go through a test to see how referable they are, and it'll break down everything and give them all the details, give them a score, all of that fun stuff. And then I also have a podcast that I've had for a long time called Access to Anyone, and that's just accesstoanyonePodcast.com.
I love it. Thank you so much, Michael. This was a fun episode, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, man.
Thank you for listening to Hacks and Hobbies. You can find additional information on the guest today on the website hacksandhobbies.com. Please feel free to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on upcoming interviews with amazing guests.